Any school benefits from good attendance, from having mentors for its students, and from having an effective and engaged set of parents. But in underperforming and undersourced schools, and there are plenty of those in Brooklyn, these are absolute necessities. The Obama administration, with its My Brother's Keeper Community Challenge, hopes to ensure what it calls, quote, a coherent cradle-to-college and career strategy aimed at improving life outcomes, especially for young African American and Latino males.
Working with community advocates in East Flatbush, the principal of Meyer Levin School for the Performing Arts, an intermediate school, has accepted the MBK Community Challenge. So let's find out what that's really going to involve. Joining us, our principal, Frederick Underwood. Welcome to BK Live. So nice to meet you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And Tony Herbert, the founder of the One Family, One Community Initiative. Tony, thank you very much for being here. Thank you both for being here. We want to talk about the Community Challenge, but Fred, as the principal, why don't you tell us what's your school all about? Tell us a little bit about the school.
We're a middle school in East Flatbush with a thriving performing arts department, steel pan band orchestra, drama, instrumental band, and chorus and dance. And the students are excited about the performing arts. They're excited to be a part of the school. But we felt that there was a challenge that our students, particularly our young men, were not excelling at the same rate as our young ladies, and we wanted to do something about it. And so with this challenge, it gave us the impetus to try to support and give additional resources to our young men.
So explain to us how the program exactly works. So do you have to kind of submit kind of a proposal outlining what it is that you want to do? How does that all play out?
Yes, so what we would do is we present a proposal to the superintendent, and that proposal would allow for our staff to engage the community-based organizations to try to reach out to our young men so that they can see positive role models outside of school. And so we were so pleased that Tony Herbert and his organization agreed to assist us in that endeavor. And so they would be working with our young men, but primarily around mentoring, but encouraging them to continue to come to school, but to look at some of the role models that are in the community that they can point to that would allow for them to be able to plot out a career path outside of junior high school and outside of high school.
So Tony, what exactly does this assistance entail?
Well, one, it brings a lot of the resources that we speak of, where these young people get to identify with folks that look just like them. And nothing to take away from basketball players or sports figures or anything of the like, but now they get to see professionals who are blue-collar, white-collar workers who can come in and give them that mentoring component that affords them some kind of information that will allow them to grow and become positive citizens in our community. The One Family, One Community Initiative is a plethora of different components. We're actually inviting a number of professionals, be they fraternal, be they clergy. We're working very closely with the Brooklyn Clergy Coalition to bring all this information and these bodies, quote unquote, to let these young people see that people do care, that they want to be involved in their life, and that, yes, we can focus you in the right direction and introduce you to a whole new life set.
Okay, so I have a question for you guys. I don't work with boys, I work with young girls of color in East New York. And it's a mentoring program. And you can give, but what do you do about those external circumstances that they have to deal with outside of all this attention, care, and love that both of your organization and you as a principal are giving? How do you combat that? Because the stress that they even face just walking to school sometimes can be just...
If I can add to that.
Yeah.
A part of the initiative, outreach is more than just within the school building.
Okay.
We're outside the school building. We're working with police department. We're working with the violence interrupters, these organizations that have gotten these grants for cure violence programs. We're all coming together. We're talking about putting close to 10,000 bodies on the street to be able to help, with this mentoring component, and thus having the opportunity to have these educators, such as this principal, who's doing a fantastic job, to actually bolster that up. Then it actually encourages the kids to know that there's a safe zone that they can go into, and that when they get outside, there are other people out here watching and making sure that they're safe.
That's great. And let's talk about in the school. How does that play out?
Well, it plays out where that the mentors would work with students and with respect to their academics, and so we would share with them and include them in our curriculum plans so that they can leverage what students are learning in school and then open up opportunities so that it can be applied in a real-world context. One of the most attractive thing about Tony's organization is that these mentorship opportunities can then also lead to internship opportunities, where that students will be able to have jobs or be able to follow professionals and get a real close-up look at life outside of East Flatbush and the community. And we think that that will certainly inspire our young men to go on to do great things.
So exactly what does the My Brother's Keeper Challenge entail?
But basically, it's about taking ownership in the community. It's the village effect. And, you know, we get back to the tribal times when the village was those who oversaw everything that was going on, and it was an all-in. And that's what we need right now. I mean, just this weekend, we're talking about over 53 shootings. Young people jumping on buses with stun guns and stealing people's phones. And my son, who was just assaulted yesterday on the Q train, for the most part. So, you know, it's an outreach. It's a saying to our folks, we have to come together. And it's a message that we're sending to this mayor as well. You can't do it by yourself, and throwing police at it is not going to resolve it all the way. It has to be community involved. It has to engage principals like this, our clergy and other professionals who come from our community that understand the community, that can help you to get away from some of this violence.
And I do have an exclusive. I just want full disclosure that just late last week, I was informed that that I will not be returning back to my 11 at the end of this year. But I'm still committed to the work. I'm still committed to ensuring that the students receive the resources, and that and I'm committed to advocating on behalf of our children that they receive all access to all of the resources that I believe they deserve.
This is news to me, but
Yeah,
we're not going to allow that to happen.
BK Live exclusive right there?
Yeah, that is
We're
a
not going to
BK
allow
Live
that to happen. No,
exclusive.
we will fight tooth and nail to make sure he stays in that school.
Okay.
And well, Fred, while you do stay in the school this year, or moving on if you are somewhere else, what steps do you take to meet this challenge, so to speak?
I ensure that my partners are committed to the vision. They're committed to our children, and that the resources that they've agreed to supply our children with and give them every opportunity to be successful, that I'm committed to staying as long as I can to ensure that those resources get into our building.
And just a quick follow-up, if I can. Tony, you say you want to ensure that Fred does stay, but how do you work to kind of put the right people in place to continue to meet these challenges
Well,
that
one,
the school and the community face?
we don't allow for people to remove these people. First and foremost, we can't afford to have politics dictate who teaches our kids in our schools. We are the community. We're the taxpayers. Right. So there will be a clear message sent to that mayor and to this the chairperson, Carmen Farina, the chancellor. You're not getting rid of our teachers. We need people like this in our schools. So why would you change that, knowing that it's something that can work to save lives? We're not going to have that.
Yeah, that's good to hear that you're committed to
totally,
pushing back on that, because everyone is not cut out for it. You know, I'm definitely not a teacher. I'm definitely not a principal. But there have to be people who are willing to show up and do the work on a regular basis.
And we can't afford to lose him to Long Island, so we don't want that.
Yeah. So I think that another question I feel like a lot of people are going to have is like, so what's the difference between this initiative and No Child Left Behind?
That's a good question. I've never really followed the No Child Left Behind program.
Okay.
What I've been able to do with this particular initiative is understand that we don't have this kind of network phase. Folks have not been invited in to be a part of the process, you know, more or less, because there's so many different dynamics. Everybody has an agenda.
Right.
And we want to get away from the political, and we want to get away from the rhetoric, so that we can get our kids convinced that there are people that care. If we can't get them to buy in, we can't save their lives. But if they don't see us organized, they're not going to want to be a part of the process.
Right.
And you did an excellent job with it, because I think the biggest disconnect with No Child Left Behind is that the benchmarks are set without the community involved and being involved.
Okay.
And so in this initiative, it's an involvement with all stakeholders, with that our community-based organizations, they're working with teachers so that we can set benchmarks for students that are realistic and that they're individualized to meet the needs of the students where they are.
Sure, and I agree with you, because sometimes someone can look from the outside in and think like, oh, this is what you need, it's very prescriptive, and you're like, 1 through 3, we need to X that out. And what we really need is this, this, and this. So this is a little bit off subject, but how do you prevent people like you from getting burnout? Because I feel like people come into
If
this
that were the case, it would have happened 15 years ago.
Okay, that's good. That's
You've been working 25 years. You invented Advocates Without Borders. What can you tell us about that? Like, how did you not burn out while doing that?
Seriously,
well, you know what it is? I bring, you know, and not to take away from his shine, because this, you know, this is my This is my everything right here. Him and his wife are very organized people, and I respect them highly in their organizational structure. But Advocates Without Borders is a creative organization, which is a network. And all we do is network with other groups to get everybody working on the same page. So it speaks directly to the One Family, One Community initiative. That's all it is. It's really saying, look, we can't make anything happen unless we're all working together. So when we jump off into the Bronx or Queens or Manhattan or even in D.C., I'm going down to Baltimore to meet with the mayor down in Baltimore. I'm meeting with the mayor, the deputy mayor in Newark. When we take this program, it's about an all hands on deck kind of concept. And that's what makes it easy when you see what's happening, but then deal with a victim of gun violence and deal with their families and have to sit there and organize a funeral with them. You see the purpose of why you have to continue to do this.
It is a collectiveness of the community, and that you know that you're not doing this alone, and that you have people like Tony and his organization and the Clergy Council and the coalition all coming together to share the weight, the burden, and because you cannot do it alone. You need the support of the community in order to raise our children.
Right, so let me ask you this then. Do you feel like you are more well received by the community because you're actually looking for their input and you want to know what their needs and concerns are?
Yeah, you know what it is? The community wants to know that they have a partner in this process that they can trust.
Yes.
And that understands, you know, quite frankly, what their issues are. I understand that, you know, and it's all about background. You know, you have a pastor sitting here, you know, and a principal. So he's an educator. So that's warm to the community. I'm a community person. I mean, fortunately, I've worked in government. I've worked for a congressman, worked in the city council, worked in the state senate. So I understand the dynamics of the bureaucracy. But at the end of the day, too, I come from the community. You know, I know what it's like to live as a homeless person, you know, having lived as a squatter in an abandoned building because of gentrification. So when I speak of that stuff, it automatically says, okay, he knows what we're dealing with. So people get the buy-in.
Got it. Got it. All right, well,
You know, thank you very much for being here. And we want to thank you for
Absolutely.
being true champions of the community. You guys
Absolutely.
did a great job, and thank you. Please come back again soon. Tony,
Yeah.
Fred, really nice to meet you guys. Thanks for
can't
being
wait
on
to hear
BK
about all
Live.
the success stories from this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you.